Thanks for having us, Coach. Do you have a plan for that 13th scholarship, or are you going to be rolling with 12?
Great question. We've talked about some different names and stuff, but not a necessity really. If you look across the landscape, there's a lot of programs that have 11, 12. If the right guy came that fit, we just don't want to disrupt chemistry. And, we've talked about getting a developmental player that maybe is a younger player that we try to grow with him. We've talked about someone from overseas, but nothing that's going to happen today. So we feel like, I look back at all these other teams that we've had, and our philosophy was always 4 sit-out guys. And so if 4 of your 13 were sit-out guys, your chemistry is really good. Guys' roles are easier to be defined. But we would like a 13th if it could, turn into a developmental piece, but not a piece to disrupt the chemistry or the rotation that we see as of today.
Most your first offseason, you had to replace essentially an entire roster, get your bearings here. This offseason, I know you didn't necessarily expect to have to replace an entire roster. You end up having to do that. How different was this offseason maybe compared to the last one in terms of constructing this team?
Yeah, I just think like when you get a job, it's like you're trying to put together a staff, you're trying to move, you're living in a hotel, then you're moving into a portal house, and it's just it's hard if any of us move in any walk of life to try to just kind of get your life together, let alone, I'm not going to get a USC student ID or whatever. I'm not trying to buy a parking pass, like all that stuff you're not doing. So it was much easier. I feel like we kind of got characteristics that some of our past teams have had success. Even in a short sample size, what you guys, we move the ball. We have multiple guys who can play point guard. So yeah, we have a lot of room to grow for sure, but we're different from a size factor standpoint as well. So I feel like we've addressed some athleticism up front, and still have great size at the point guard position. So I would say that it's this off season was much more normal. Really only one surprise, to be honest, with how the roster unfolded. And we recovered, I thought, really good with what we thought was the way our roster was, turned real quick, and then we circled back and got somebody else real quick.
I was going to say, it seemed like you guys expected, or at least hoped, that Wes and Des would be a part of this picture. What was that pivot like, just to find out that they were going elsewhere? How much did that change your plans, midstream?
Wes, made his decision fairly early. So I think right around the crown, we had a pretty good feel. Desmond's was much later. It's, the last day. And it's just kind of the landscape of all college sports. It's not just, USC basketball or it's happened all across the country that, the guys are, that's their prerogative to, really, like we felt like Jalen Shelley and Isaiah Elohim, those young pieces, Kevin Patton, like all those guys we really liked. It's just a matter of, can you really guarantee minutes, and that's hard to do. But all 3 of those guys, like great attitudes. I think they're going to be really good players at their next stops, and players that it's just hard, to guarantee. But those guys like all got better last year. We felt like they improved. They got better in the weight room, and I think that those 3 guys got great careers ahead of them. Made good decisions where they're going. places that they can get, major minutes. And I think that's, important for young players like those guys. So I just think it's just kind of how things roll. And then Terrence still being out is we hadn't anticipated that. We thought that come the first day of summer, but it's been a really, really slow healing process. There's not a lot of blood flow that gets through to where his bone is. But we anticipate that by August he'll be ready. So when we come back for the next segment of our work, that he'll be available. But we need him out there, because he understands that, without Terrence out there, it's a whole new, team. So you're trying to teach a lot of different stuff. But this is a really smart group.
How do you expect Chad Baker-Mazara to handle his new role? And are you worried about the temper problems that he's had in the past?
Well, I think when you look at Chad, he's won as many games as any college basketball player around. I mean, he wins everywhere he goes. They won at San Diego State. They have won at a high level at Auburn. And I think the other thing, you always have a unique perspective when you've played against a player. And so I've competed against Chad, and he's super competitive, second leading scorer on a team that was ranked number 1 in the country for most of the year, or at least in the top 5. So I think anytime you can add a player that's got experience, versatility, competitiveness, toughness, not afraid of the big moment, all those things, we're super, super excited about Chad. He's emotional, so am I. So I think it's probably actually, he and I are probably a really good fit for each other. I can relate to players like Chad. And so, you look at the number of games that he's played over his career. I mean, he's plays 33 games, he's a guy that has, knock on wood, been, non-injury prone, and when he is injured, he plays through them. I mean, he played through basically a broken bone this year through the latter part of Auburn season. So he shows the toughness to play through stuff too, which I think is super important. And he's a veteran. He's about as veteran as you can have in college basketball.
Coach, just following up on the roster and roster building, obviously last season the entire staff was just thrown into this situation mid-portal. You're trying to build a roster very quickly. I've had the benefit of an entire season. I'm sure during the season you guys are making a list of this is what we're looking for in this upcoming offseason. This is how we want to construct the roster, kind of change personnel or what we're looking for in personnel. How do you feel it's come out now that the team is here? Do you feel like the team that's up there today is kind of what you guys had circled and were looking for during those discussions?
Well, I think, just because of the changing rosters across the landscape, I think it's really hard to just say, hey, we had, these holes, and now we got to, because we only have one guy back. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, we lack shot blocking, so we went out and got shot blocking, but we needed shot blocking because of the league that we play in. So I would say as much as anything, it was being able to survey the land of what the Big Ten is like. A big part of our thing is like we need players that can win on the road because everywhere we go is sold out, everywhere. And so, for guys like Chad to have had that pressure of because like Auburn had pressure every single night, immense pressure to win. So he's been in some big games. Playing in the ACC like Jacob has, he's played in, some big games, and obviously, Rodney playing on a NCAA tournament team at Maryland, and the crowds not only that they had at home, but also the crowds that they had to play on the road. So all those things become super important in our recruiting process of kind of what we're looking for. And so we feel like, we've solved some of those issues, and we still got holes that I was pretty honest with you guys last year on where I thought we needed to get better at and areas that we had to evolve with. I think the biggest thing is we got to remain healthy. If you look at the number of games missed injury-wise, and it wasn't talked enough about, to be honest with you. We're very, very close to a top 10 team in the country with games missed due to injury. And we didn't have necessarily enough talent 1 through 13 to be a team that had so many missed games. Not having Terrence hurt us big time for an entire Big Ten season. And so that was, we got to try to remain healthier than we did this past year.
When will Cornish
Be available, and with Coach Boykins, my apologies if I missed him, but if he's not here, when will he get here, and what does he bring to your staff?
Yeah, no, Coach Boykins is here. He had a death in the family, so he had to go back to Cleveland for a funeral. He's been awesome. I think just having played for me changes the perspective. I wanted to make sure that we had some people on staff that had put on a uniform for me and understood what was asked. Lindsey Drew is now a grad assistant. That changes our perspective. Lindsey's not that long ago from playing for me. Earl's played for me a couple different times and worked for me. So I think that he knows everything that about our system. He knows how we recruit. And then certainly Lindsey, has the ability to, when he played for me, he knew all 5 positions. And so he's a guy that's an added vehicle or tool for us as well. But Earl's here. He's doing great. It's going to be a great addition for us. What was the other question?
When is Cornish going to be available?
Yeah, so Cornish, it's just, he finished his last final, I think, on Friday. So now it's getting the grades posted, applying to, like all that stuff. So it's just really a form. We're not worried about him getting into school coming from Dartmouth, but it's just a formality. We would hope, once that happens, then he can do all his physicals. And then at that point, we're assuming by like Tuesday, Wednesday that he would be available to practice.
Coach, you talked about Chad being a very emotional player. Last year you talked about St. Thomas the same way. What are the differences personality-wise?
Well, like Saint was such a huge part of our team. I would say he's he was the most valuable player to us because of how he practiced so hard and his consistency in practice and his buy-in. For sure he was the one guy that that I just felt from a practice habit standpoint was off the charts. But then in a game, I think you always want a player that's got, great passion and tries to make his teammates better. And I think if you look at the assists and the ball movement that Saint did for us, he made other guys that had high scoring averages, he helped them with his ball movement and his basketball IQ. And so when you talk about Chad, I think it's the same thing. It's his ability to see extra passes and his ability to be like a point forward, because we did put the ball in Saint's hands quite often to be a decision maker out of necessity. Not only decision maker, but willingness to pass the ball. So we feel that we have those same characteristics with Chad.
All right, we'll take this as the last question so we can get you rolling with the guys.
Yeah, Mus, I know last year you talked about when Dez committed, that was a big moment in terms of trying to put that roster together. Was there a moment this summer as you're putting this roster together where it felt like, wow, we're really on the right path after this guy or after something happened?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of we had, it wasn't like one or two, it was, I think the 4 guys that you're going to talk to today, like all 4 of those, like it was heavy competition to recruit, Rodney and Ezra and Chad and Jacob. Like it was not easy recruitment. It was much harder recruiting these guys than last year's roster. And what I mean by that is just from a competition standpoint of who we were trying to beat out for those guys. So, as far as an aha moment or a moment of I think it was, really 5 or 6 guys that in their own unique way can make us or help us become a different team. So I wouldn't say that, you know, it was one or two this year. It was and then somebody always is going to play better than you think too. You know, like, and somebody should rise to the occasion this year with us too. That you know, like supersedes, you know, anything that would be anticipated from them. I think that's a job of our staff, is to try to help as many players have career years as possible, because that's what we talk about in closed door meetings as a staff is, you know, how many players on this roster can have a career year. And so if somebody like Chad's played X amount of years in college, how can this be his best year? That's our job, to try to make that happen for each and every guy. So whether we do it or not, we won't know until March. And then the other thing before, like anytime, you know, if we're not opening up this stuff enough to you guys, let us know. You know what I mean? Because, and Kristen and I have talked, like, I mean, we have the TV crew in every time we play a game, and I don't see any reason why, if we don't have TV, that we can't open it up to you guys if you guys want that. I just think we need to know it. Like, I don't think anywhere I've ever worked anybody thinks that we're too closed. It's actually the opposite, where admin's coming and saying we're too open. So we want to make sure that, you know, we need as much publicity as we can get. So bring it on. Thanks, guys.
Hey guys, thanks for doing this. Ryan Carchi with the LA Times. Nice to meet you guys. If you guys could just first kind of tell us what led you, all four of you, to USC. What was, how did that sort of pursuit go, and what was it that kind of finally made that decision for the four of you?
For me, this is a great place. Coach Muss, great guy off the court, especially. I think he's a cool person, a great coach, knows what he's talking about, has coached in the league. So I like that in terms of ball knowledge.
Ronnie said coach. He used to coach the Dominican national team, so I'm kind of familiar a little bit with him. You know, played against him when he was in Arkansas, so I really like the stuff that he put out against us. And my auntie personally graduated from here a couple of years ago, and this is the first college I ever visited, and that stuck in my head. And me personally, I said that day that I wanted to put a jersey from here.
Yeah, for me, being recruited by Coach Muss, I like how direct he was. I thought he was a very good coach. He's coached NBA players. He's coached in the NBA. I also been recruited by Will Conray since I was in high school, so it was just a good fit for me.
My answer might be a little different. Coach Muss gave me the black Amex card, so. No, I'm playing. I think what really brought my attention, though, wanted to, or accepting the challenge to compete in an environment that nobody thought I could do it in. Definitely, you know, with his trust and conversations we had, I feel like there was the right opportunity and decision making. So I'm looking forward to an amazing season with all of us in the team.
Hey everyone, I'm Connor Morissette with 24/7 Sports. For Rodney and Chad, you guys left pretty good situations to come here. What about Eric Musselman's pitch about USC made you think that, hey, this was the right place for me, leaving spots that were pretty good last year?
I feel like he challenged me in a way that I wanted to be challenged in my life, and I feel like in my other situations I wasn't going to be challenged as how I wanted to. And I feel like personally I always been doubted in my life, and he said something to me it was pretty unique. I cannot repeat, but he said something to me pretty unique, stuck up with me, and he basically just challenged me and said, I think I believe that you could do that. And you know, that to me just stuck up with me and decided to come here.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of similar to Chad in terms of the challenges. It's a new opportunity, a great opportunity for me to be a better basketball player and man off the court. So I have a lot of learning to do here, and that's a good reason why I chose here as well.
Rodney, have there been discussions about where you're going to play? Are you going to play on the ball or off the ball or some combination?
Probably a good combination. I look at myself as a versatile player. I can play on the ball, point guard, off the ball, score the ball, make my teammates better. Whatever the team needs, I'm gonna be able to do it. So.
Last year, you were the glue guy of one of the best college basketball teams we've seen in the decade. How do you expect to elevate your role this year on a new team in a new school?
I'm just trying to, help out the guys. I've been through that experience of a Final Four, so being able to, just drop some knowledge to these guys and, help them with, also with their experience that I had. I feel like that will help me a lot to help them, but at the same time help myself to step up into that bigger role and bring my game to a bigger level.
For both Jacob and Chad, you guys, I think when you committed, it was a little bit of a surprise to some of us. We had no idea you guys were even looking at SC at the time. Maybe, Jacob, you could just talk about, when did you kind of figure out before you committed that SC was going to be the place for you? And kind of same for you, Chad, before it leaked out. How soon was it that you decided to go to SC before it was announced? And then just for Ezra, want to ask you, obviously you played in the Big 12 last year for Utah. Just what, I know it's been very early so far, but what you've seen from this team, just kind of comparing it to what you saw last year at Utah and in the Big 12.
During the recruiting process, like I said, Muss was very straightforward with me. He knew when he wants a player, he's going to make it obvious to you, and he's going to go out his way. And once I saw that type of love from a coach and from the coaching staff, I knew it was a no-brainer. So, yeah.
Yeah, like Jacob said, the whole coaching staff, especially Muss, was pretty much straightforward with me. They said, we ain't gonna hear the baby you, but we're gonna help you become a better player and a young man in life. So that within itself, to me, just stood out. And how clear he was just about everything, and that to me, I like that. I don't like no shooter cutting stuff. So.
To answer your question, it's definitely a complete different environment, for sure. Far as competitiveness, I don't know. I just think we, as the more days we stack and the more days that I'm here and that we're here, of course we're just gonna learn from each other. So the sky's the limit for us, and that's what we're aiming for.
Chad, Muss was talking about how your emotion that you play with on the court is kind of a good match for him, just as an emotional guy. Is that something you sensed kind of right away when you meet him?
Oh, yes. Before I even got here, he used to FaceTime a couple of us, and there was a couple of FaceTime calls. I was like, yeah, this guy kind of much like me. So a lot of people are saying that we wasn't going to connect good together, but I'm like the complete opposite. I'm like, you put crazy and crazy together. I mean, it might work. So, but nah, great personality. How I say, we got a lot in common, so I feel like that could help me a lot in the court as much as off the court.
You guys all went to schools last year away from the West Coast. Coach has taken you guys to the beach playing wiffle ball. What's it just been like to be in this new environment with the new team? What's all this been like?
Man, it's definitely a different vibe. The weather's nice out here. Back home, it was bipolar, stuff like that. Different people. Getting to know my new teammates, so it's definitely been a lot of fun these last couple weeks, and we just got to keep stacking days, like Ezra said, and continue to build chemistry and to bond.
I'm a West Coast kid, so it was different for me to be in the East Coast, and I feel like most West Coast players stay on the West Coast, so I feel like I'm at home again.
Me personally, I used to play for San Diego State a couple years ago, so I'm a little used to the West Coast. I kind of like that a little bit more than the East Coast, so I had to come back. I had to run it back.
For Ezra and Jacob, Muss has talked about doing something different really in the front court. When he's making the pitch to you guys, what was your understanding of how you guys plan to be used or how they plan to use you, and what about the way this offense works you thought could unlock maybe something different in your game?
I think me and Ezra aren't traditional type of big, so that's what Coach Muss likes. I feel like he can put us in situations to handle the ball, and handle the ball and put us in like DHOs and just use us not as big man, like floor spacers. And I feel like we can use that as our advantage as traditional big men in college. They're not used to guarding players like me and Ezra.
I don't consider us bigs. I can just consider us ball players because we're versatile in all aspects. So I think, me and him are willing to take any challenge that comes forward, and we're looking forward to dominate anybody that want to step foot in front of us. So me and him ain't scared of nobody.
Yeah. I like that. Oh, man.
Another one for Rodney and Chad. I know it's so early, but being around this new group of players, you guys have had success in college basketball in the past. Are you getting the same vibes from this team? And just why or why not?
Yes, because one, we got a group of dogs in here that they all want to come. We all come in here trying to get better. We're helping each other to get better. Even when someone makes a little mistake, instead of getting on somebody, guys are doing a good job trying to help and lead. So seeing that from everybody, not just from one person, I feel very good about this situation and how he said, what Ezra said, they ain't scared of nobody. That goes for the whole team. We ain't scared of what matchup comes.
So everyone is competitive. Everyone has a great attitude. That's the first step. And then off the court will help us as well. Continue to hang out with each other, do stuff. Even if it doesn't involve basketball, that stuff like that helps. So, we're just going to try to continue to build to be successful.
Last question.
Chad, you mentioned coaching the Dominican national team. Did he bring that out like immediately when he's trying to sway you, or how much did maybe his knowledge of the Dominican Republic help maybe in swaying you?
It helps a lot because sometimes I speak Spanish to him, and he will try to respond to me in Spanish, and it's pretty cool, having a coach that, knows a little bit about, where I come from, and, been there and experienced that, and actually, worked out with players who've worked me out, in the future. So, it's pretty good, he knowing, a little bit of my culture, and, he respects that and try to, help me embrace that, in a way. And I feel like the guys, help me too with sometimes I try to mess with them in Spanish and stuff like that, and they mess with me back. So, we got a pretty good connection in here. So I'm pretty looking forward for this year for real.
How's the Spanish?
Who's?
Must.
Oh, it's pretty good actually. I was a little surprised. He said a couple words to me the other day. I was like, hold on, that was you.
Cap.
Awesome. Thank you guys.